Tano Sports Central will be giving you guys the first edition of my 2021 NFL mock draft. And as we head into the month of February, it's time to start looking forward to this year's NFL draft in a couple of months. And this is really going to be an outstanding draft class. I mean, with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, I'd probably say this draft class is as good of one as I've seen, at least in the past 5 years. So it's going to be a fun one for sure. And that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started with this right away, starting out with the #1 overall pick. It's got to be Trevor Lawrence. I mean, if you look at how Trevor Lawrence has performed at Clemson this season, and in his career in general over the past 3 years, like he won a national championship, and even last season, I mean, he was outstanding. He put up 3,100 yards, 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a 70% completion rate as well. It's really been an outstanding year for Trevor Lawrence, and really I think for the Jaguars right now, they got to get a good quarterback. I mean, they got Gardner Minshew in there. They got a couple of quarterbacks, Jake Luton, but I mean, Trevor Lawrence would be an outstanding quarterback for this team, and I really do think he could really help turn Jacksonville around. And really, I mean, if you look at Jacksonville last season, they were 1-15, and Trevor Lawrence could be really a huge player to build around. And I really think that the Jaguars could improve a ton with having Trevor Lawrence under center. Moving on to #2, it's going to be DeVonta Smith, Alabama wide receiver who won the Heisman. And really, I mean, there's been a lot of different opinions as far as who the Jets are going to go with the #2 pick. But I think DeVonta Smith would be perfect. I mean, really, I think they should be just fine with Sam Darnold. And I understand Sam Darnold really, he's not much of a quarterback to lead a team to a Super Bowl by any means, but he's definitely a player that I think could lead a team to a playoff appearance. And DeVonta Smith would be perfect for Sam Darnold. He'd be a great receiver. He's definitely the best receiver in the draft, I would say. There are a couple of arguments that Ja'Marr Chase possibly could go before DeVonta Smith, but DeVonta Smith right now is playing better than anyone. Like, we saw him in the first half of that national championship game. I mean, he was outstanding. And if you look at his 2020 stats, 1,800 yards and 23 touchdowns through a limited season. Like, this Alabama team did not play a full 15-game season. So, I mean, DeVonta Smith is outstanding. He'd be a great pick for the Jets. The Jets being 2-14 last season, I really do think would have a huge grab here in DeVonta Smith. #3 is going to be PENEI SEWELL from Oregon, offensive tackle. He's the first offensive lineman to go in the draft, and he's going to Miami. I think, honestly, like, whichever quarterback the Dolphins have under center, with whether it's Tua or whether it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think PENEI SEWELL would be a huge pickup for the offensive line. Like, if Miami's going to be successful offensively, and even in the quarterback situation, they got to get a good offensive they got to really build this offensive line, and I think SEWELL could be a huge addition to this offensive line. We saw how well he played with Oregon. I mean, yeah, he's gonna do a great job with Miami if he really does go to the Dolphins, which I really do think that he's definitely the best offensive lineman in this draft, and I think he's definitely going to do a good job in Miami if he does get that opportunity. Dolphins last season were 10-6. Moving on to #4 pick, it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons going with Justin Fields, and there's been a lot of different opinions as to where Justin Fields is going to go. I've got him going as the #2 quarterback in this draft to to Atlanta. He was from Ohio State, and of course, if you look at Justin Fields, I mean, I think his upside really is higher than Zach Wilson or any other quarterback in this draft other than Trevor Lawrence. I really do think Justin Fields has got a very high upper limit, and if you look at him and how he played over the course of the season, I mean, it wasn't. He did have some inconsistencies. I mean, he put up 2,100 yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, but his completion rate, 70%. That is an outstanding completion rate. And really for Justin Fields, I mean, we saw him in that game against Clemson in the college football playoff semifinal. That's really how high that Justin Fields can get. Like, he was outstanding in that game, and I really do think, I mean, he can really reach that potential for every game. I mean, this is a player that I definitely think has got a ton of potential, and that's why I've got him going to Atlanta. And the thing is about the Falcons here, if you're looking at their quarterback situation, Matt Ryan is starting to get a little bit older, so they definitely need to look at possibly getting a new quarterback. I mean, I think he's 36. Quote me if I'm wrong there, but yeah, Justin Fields would be a perfect pickup for them. Once again, I mean, if you look at his stats, put up an outstanding season, 22-6 touchdown interception ratio, put up a great year for the Ohio State Buckeyes. If you look at the Falcons last season, they were 4-12 overall, so I mean, yeah, this team really does need a better quarterback if they're going to be able to proceed on to the playoffs again. #5 is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals going with Ja'Marr Chase. And Ja'Marr Chase did not play in the 2020 season, ended up opting out. But in 2019, I mean, that 2019 season really showed how Ja'Marr Chase can be. I mean, he put up 1,700 yards, 20 touchdowns. He's going to be the second receiver to go in this draft. And honestly, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to see Ja'Marr Chase go over DeVonta Smith, but I do think Ja'Marr Chase, with him being opted out of the 2020 season, like, this could have been a huge year for him in college football if he were to play. So yeah, Jamar Chase, he's got a ton of potential as well, a ton of upside. He's going to go to Cincinnati, and he's going to be a great receiver for Joe Burrow. Like, Joe Burrow, he's definitely the quarterback that the Bengals are going to go with for quite a long time. I definitely think he's a great long-term quarterback. Jamar Chase would be perfect for the Bengals in this situation. Bengals 2020 record 4-11-1. Moving on to number 6, we got the Philadelphia Eagles going with Jaylen Waddle. So 3 receivers. I've got 3 receivers going in the first 6 picks. Yeah, Jaylen Waddle would be perfect. And really, I mean, I almost feel like Jaylen Waddle is the 3rd best receiver, mainly because, I mean, there's a chance. I mean, he made some outstanding plays this season, and even dealing with the injuries here, like Jaylen Waddle played outstanding. He put up 603 yards, 4 touchdowns. Once again, he was injured for a good chunk of the season, but I mean, this is a player that's got a tremendous amount of upside as well. Like, DeVonta Smith was a great receiver for Alabama. I mean, this guy, Jaylen Waddle, is just as, I mean, he's got just as much potential as DeVonta Smith does. If you look at the Eagles last season, 4-11-1, and really, whichever quarterback they got under center, whether it's Jalen Hurts, I mean, really, I mean, I definitely think either it's Carson Wentz. I mean, even if Carson Wentz is under center, which, I mean, many people, including myself, don't expect him to be going into next season, Jaylen Waddle would be a perfect pickup for the Eagles. Number 7 is going to be the Detroit Lions. They're going to go with Zach Wilson, quarterback. And really, I mean, the Lions actually just traded with the Rams here tonight. Of course, I wrote this down a couple of days ago with the Lions going with Zach Wilson. So this could possibly change. Once again, I will, in my second mock draft, this could change. But Zach Wilson, I've got BYU quarterback going to the Lions right now. However, it'd be kind of an interesting situation if the Lions did go with a quarterback here because, I mean, they're getting Jared Goff from the Rams. They traded for him. So Jared Goff is likely going to be the number 1 quarterback right now. It's just a matter of whether they go with a receiver maybe, or whether they go with Zach Wilson, possibly go for another quarterback just to see whether Zach Wilson or Jared Goff can win it out in the end. But I definitely think there's a good chance, though, right now that the Lions will not go with Zach Wilson. But that just happened, like, literally right as I was recording this. So, yeah, Zach Wilson, though, I do have him going to the Lions right now. He'd be the 3rd quarterback to go. Looking at his stats last season, he's got a tremendous touchdown interception ratio with 33 to 3, 3,600 yards as well on the season. Lions 2020 record was 5-11. Moving on to number 8, it's going to be the Carolina Panthers going with Mac Jones. So this is our 4th quarterback in the top 8 picks. If you look at Mac Jones here, I mean, look, his stats are outstanding, and I definitely think he's going to go above Trey Lance for that reason. I mean, he played with a national championship team. He's been a lot more experienced than Trey Lance, so that's kind of why I think Mac Jones will go before Trey Lance here. But at 4,500 yards on the season, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a 77% completion rate. I mean, that's an accurate stat right there, 77%. Like, that's an outstanding completion rate. I think that's the top in the FBS this season with 77%. So Mac Jones, I mean, he had an outstanding season for Alabama, and I think he'd do a great job with the Panthers. And really, I mean, Carolina, after having Teddy Bridgewater this season and seeing how he kind of had a lackluster season, I think Mac Jones would be the perfect pickup for the Panthers here. Panthers last season were 5-11. Moving on to number 9, we got the Denver Broncos going with Micah Parsons, linebacker, top linebacker to go in the draft, and he is out of Penn State. He did not play in 2020. Of course, he did opt out, but I mean, Denver, they've got to build the linebacking core here if they want to succeed defensively. I mean, if you look at this rushing defense for the Broncos, that's the main way that they're getting beat on the defensive side is with the rush defense. And I think Micah Parsons would be the perfect solution to that. And yeah, Micah Parsons, I mean, we saw him in the 2019 season especially. He played outstanding for Penn State. He would be the perfect pickup, I'd say, for the Broncos. Number 10 is going to be the Dallas Cowboys going with Christian DARRISAW out of Virginia Tech, offensive tackle, second one to go in the draft. And whether it's Dak Prescott or Andy Dalton under center, the offensive line needs to be better. We saw this past season, I mean, yeah, Dak Prescott got hurt, Andy Dalton got hurt. This offensive line had a very tough time protecting the quarterback this season, and they got to do a much better job at that if they're going to get anywhere in this upcoming season. So Christian DARRISAW, I definitely think would be a great pickup for the Cowboys in this situation. They're definitely going to go with the offensive line, or with a offensive lineman. It's just a matter of who. I've got Christian DARRISAW going to Dallas right now. If you look at their record last season, they were 6-10. Moving on to number 11, we've got the New York Giants going with Kyle Pitts. This may come as kind of a surprise to some of you guys. Florida tight end, obviously, he was an outstanding tight end last season. I'd definitely say the best tight end in all of the nation by far, by a large margin for that matter. Put up 770 yards, 12 touchdowns last season with Florida. And really, I mean, for the Giants here, they could have an outstanding tight end tight end core here if they could get Kyle Pitts. Like, you got Evan Ingram in there, you could add in Kyle Pitts. Like, this tight end position for the Giants could be outstanding. And really, I mean, at this point, I mean, Kyle Pitts would be, I mean, they need some more depth on the offensive line as well. So, I mean, that would be a huge addition for the Giants. 770 yards, 12 touchdowns. Giants' 2020 record was 6-10. Number 12, the 49ers has got to be Patrick Surtain for me, Alabama defensive back. And if you look at this 49ers defense, I mean, they're pretty good on the defensive line. They've got several really good players on there. It's just the secondary where they were really getting beat last season, and Patrick Surtain really would be a huge addition to this 49ers defense. Last season for Alabama, he put up 37 tackles, 3.5 for loss, and 1 interception. Great season for Patrick Surtain. I definitely think he'd be a huge addition to the Niners. Moving on to number 13, the Los Angeles Chargers. We'll go with Rashawn Slater, offensive lineman for Northwestern, or from Northwestern. If you look at it, I mean, if you look at this Chargers offense in general, they got their quarterback. Justin Herbert is an outstanding quarterback. He's going to be a long-term quarterback, I think, for the Los Angeles Chargers, and we'll possibly see. I think Justin Herbert could have a very big breakout season in the near future. You can mark my words there. I think this team easily could be a playoff team next season. It's just the offensive line. Like, this offensive line last season was a very big weak spot for the Chargers, and Rashawn Slater would be a huge addition to this offensive line, giving Justin Herbert more time in the pocket and more protection in general. The Chargers, though, they're that close to being a playoff team. I really do think so. They just need a better offensive line, and I mean, with a few good draft picks, this team could easily be on their way to a playoff position next year. Number 14 for the Minnesota Vikings is going to be ALIJAH VERA-TUCKER, USC offensive tackle, fourth one to go in the draft. I mean, for the Vikings here too, I mean, they just don't have a good offensive line. I mean, Kirk Cousins had no protection last season whatsoever. I mean, this offensive line was really not in a very good position. ALIJAH VERA-TUCKER would do a really good job with the Vikings. I think he'd be a perfect addition for this Minnesota offensive line. Offensive line's always been a big weak spot for Minnesota over the past few seasons, and this would be a huge addition for them there. Number 15 is going to be the New England Patriots, going with a quarterback, Trey Lance, North Dakota State quarterback. And if you look at his 2019 stats, he did not play in 2020 due to opting out with COVID. But if you look at his 2019 stats, 2,700 yards, 28 touchdowns, no interceptions. That is a rare sight to see there out of any quarterback, really from any level. 0 interceptions over a course of a season. I understand Trey Lance is an FCS quarterback, but I mean, 66% completion rate. I mean, this guy's got a lot of potential, I think, moving forward. And really, I mean, the only concern that I've got about Trey Lance, and the reason why I've got him going 5th in the quarterback position for this draft, is because, I mean, it's going to be a crazy adjustment going from the FCS all the way to the NFL. Like, he was not even a Power 5. He wasn't even a Group of 5. He wasn't even in a Group of 5 team. He was with North Dakota State, which obviously North Dakota State is a very dominant team. They're like the Alabama of the FCS, if you want a comparison. But Trey Lance, I mean, he's a great quarterback, a lot of upside, but it's just the adjustment that could be a bit of a problem for him. I mean, going from FCS to NFL, once again, is quite a jump. Number 16 is going to be the Arizona Cardinals, going with Caleb Farley, Virginia Tech defensive back, second one to go in this draft. 2020 stats, 20 tackles, 4 interceptions, and 1 touchdown as well. So Caleb Farley had an outstanding season for Virginia Tech. He was really the main highlight of this Virginia Tech secondary last season, and Arizona's going to go with them. This defense really needs more depth on the secondary part of things, and Caleb Farley would be perfect for that. Otherwise, the Cardinals last year, pretty good team. This team honestly could make it to the playoffs. If they can just get a couple of good additions to this defense, they'll be just fine. Like, this offense was great last year. Kyler Murray, all around, this offense is looking great. It's just the defensive side was not as good last year. Number 17 is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders, going with JAYLEN PHILLIPS, Miami defensive end, first defensive lineman to go in this draft. Kind of odd to see a defensive lineman going this late in the draft, especially for being the first overall one. But for 2020 stats for him, 45 total tackles, 8 sacks, 1 interception. Outstanding stats for sure out of JAYLEN PHILLIPS. And if you look at this Raiders team in general, this defensive line was not very good last season. I mean, if you look at the defensive side, offensive line was okay, but the defensive line was not very good. And for JAYLEN PHILLIPS, he would be a huge addition for the Raiders here. Number 18, Miami Dolphins, their second first-round pick is going to be Jeremiah OWUSU. From Notre Dame, linebacker, second linebacker to go in the draft. If you look at his 2020 stats, 62 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 interception. If you look at the linebacking core for the Miami Dolphins, that's the main area where they were getting beat last season. And honestly, the rushing defense in general was not all that good out of Miami last year. And Jeremiah OWUSU would be a huge addition for this Miami linebacking core. So definitely watch out for a linebacker to go for the Dolphins in pick number 18. Number 19 to the Washington football team, KADARIUS Toney, wide receiver out of Florida, the top receiver for the Gators last season. Look at his stats. I mean, he put up 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns as well. Great season for KADARIUS Toney, and he's going to be an outstanding receiver, I think, in the NFL. And really for the Washington football team, I mean, they got a decent quarterback going right now with Alex Smith, and obviously it's not going to be very long that Alex Smith will be still in the NFL, but I mean, if they could get a good receiver here, I mean, this would be a great situation to do it. I mean, the thing is about Washington here is there is a chance, I will say there is a chance that we do see Washington go with a quarterback if like say Trey Lance, for example. If Trey Lance falls to the number 19 position somehow, I definitely think Washington will go with him. But in this situation, I think wide receiver is going to be their second best bet. KADARIUS Toney will be going to Washington in this situation. 10 touchdowns, 1,100 yards. Not looking too bad for Washington. Number 20 pick is going to go to the Chicago Bears. Tevin Jenkins, Ole Miss offensive tackle, 5th one to go in this draft. Lots of great offensive linemen going in this first round. If any quarterback's going to succeed in Chicago, whether it's, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's Trubisky or not, Tevin Jenkins would be a huge addition to this Bears offensive line. This team needs a better offensive line in general. That's been the main problem for the Bears over the past few years, is in the offensive line. This would be huge for the Bears here, and this would be huge for the quarterback if they could get a better offensive line. Tevin Jenkins would be exactly that. 21 is going to go to the Indianapolis Colts. They're going to go with Greg Rousseau, Miami defensive end, 2nd one to go in the draft. Look at his stats from last season: 54 total tackles, 20 for loss, 15 sacks. He had 15 sacks with Miami last season, which is outstanding. I mean, I could see Greg Rousseau easily going a lot higher than this. I definitely could see him being the top defensive end as well in the draft. It's just a matter of whether it's him or the other defensive end. But if you look at the Colts in general right now, they were 11-5 last season. This team was really good. They were a playoff team, and I definitely think the Colts could be a much better team if they could get a better defensive line here. That could be a huge addition with Greg Rousseau. Number 22 is going to be the Tennessee Titans, going with Kwity Paye, Michigan defensive end, 3rd one to go in the draft. If you look at him last season, 50 total tackles, 13 for loss, 6.5 sacks. The Titans last season were pretty good on the defensive side. I mean, if you look at their offensive line, though, or their defensive line is what I should say, it was not near as good. Like, we saw Aaron Jones. Remember that in Week 16 when the Tennessee Titans went to Lambeau? Aaron Jones in that Packers offense just ran all over the Titans, and Kwity Paye would be a huge addition for that reason. He would be a huge addition to this defensive line, and he'd help them out a ton. 23 is going to go to the New York Jets. Aaron Robinson from UCF, defensive back, is going to go to the Jets here. I mean, this secondary for the Jets was pretty rough last season, and I mean, if you look at their game, I forget who they played, but they were that close to getting their first win of the season against a halfway decent team. It's just in the secondary they got completely nailed in the last second of the game. I forget who they were playing there, but I mean, yeah, Aaron Robinson would be a huge addition for the Jets there. 3rd defensive back to go in this draft. If you look at his stats from last season, 41 total tackles, 1 for a loss. Jets overall record in 2020 was 2-14. So the Jets really can take all that they can get going into next season. 24 is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, going with Zaven Collins, Tulsa defensive end, 4th one to go in this draft. And if you look at his stats from last year, 54 total tackles, 4 sacks, 4 interceptions as well as a defensive end. Pretty impressive. But yeah, Zaven Collins would be a huge addition. If you look at him at Tulsa, he was an outstanding player, one of the best in the conference for sure, if not the best defensive lineman in that entire conference. And for the Steelers, this team really, I mean, they need to put more pressure on the quarterback if they're going to do better on defense. And also, I mean, in general, like, this rushing defense was not very good last season. Zaven Collins would be a very good addition for Pittsburgh. 25, the Jacksonville Jaguars, their 2nd pick in this first round. They're going to go with Christian Barmore, Alabama defensive tackle. I can't even remember how many Alabama players have already gone in this draft. We've seen at least, I think, 4 or 5 in this first round that I've already listed off. But that being said, yeah, Christian Barmore going to be a huge player if he can go to the Jaguars. Really help out this defensive line in general, and also help out. I mean, if you look at this defensive line and if you look at this rush defense, that would help them out a ton with getting Christian Barmore. And honestly, I could see Barmore going a lot higher in this draft too. Watch out for that. I definitely think he could go decently higher in this draft, so watch out for that. But 2020 stats: 37 tackles, 9.5 for loss, and 8 sacks. He put up 8 sacks last season. Pretty impressive out of Barmore. Looking at your number 26, it's going to be the Cleveland Browns, big surprise team of last season. J.C. Horn is going to go to Cleveland, South Carolina defensive back, 4th one to go in the draft. 2020 stats: 16 tackles, 1 for loss, 2 interceptions, and that's through 7 games. For J.C. Horn, I mean, this is a player that I definitely think has got a lot of potential and a ton of upside. I mean, if you look at him and how he played last season, I mean, yeah, this is a player that really, I think, Could be one to watch out for going into next season. The Browns are definitely going to be getting a good one in J.C. Horn if they can pick him up. 11-5 is going to be the Browns, or was the Browns record in 2020. 27 pick is going to be going to the Baltimore Ravens. Terrace Marshall, LSU wide receiver, is going to go to the Ravens here. And I mean, there are a lot of great receivers in this first round. I definitely think Terrace Marshall is no exception. I mean, out of LSU, he's going to be the 5th receiver to go once again. 731 yards and 10 touchdowns last season. Overall, just an outstanding season for Terrace Marshall. He's going to be a huge addition for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, I mean, Lamar Jackson's an outstanding quarterback. He's a very accurate passer, great runner. But the problem was for him last season was he didn't have hardly any good weapons on the offensive side. Marquise Brown, but I mean, he really didn't have any elite wide receivers. And Terrace Marshall would be a huge addition, I think, there. There's a good chance that he could possibly have a big breakout season next year, like we saw that with Jefferson at Minnesota. I mean, who knows? It could be Terrace Marshall next season. So for the Ravens, that could be a huge pickup for them. 28 to the New Orleans Saints. They're going to go with Trevon Moehrig from TCU, safety. First safety to go in this first round. The 2020 stats, 47 tackles, 2 for loss, 2 interceptions. Had a pretty good season for TCU. He's going to be a huge addition for the Saints secondary in general. I mean, if you look at the Saints last year, the defensive side was pretty good. This defensive line's really good. Rushing defense in general is pretty good, but the secondary, not so much. Trevon would be a huge addition, I think, there, and the Saints would have a lot of potential there with Trevon. Number 29 to the Green Bay Packers. They got to go with a receiver, right? I mean, last year, when everyone thought they were going to go with a receiver, they went with Jordan Love, who is now a third-string quarterback. And me being a Packers fan, I will admit that. I mean, that was a terrible pick by the Packers. I still can't believe they did that, but I genuinely do hope that they go for a receiver here. I think Marquez Stevenson would be your best receiver at this point. He's out of Houston. Put up nearly 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns last season. Not a bad year out of him. I definitely think we could either see either Marquez Stevenson or Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore out of Purdue. He would be the other potential candidate to go to the Packers here at 29. But then again, I mean, I've seen a couple mock drafts where the Packers would go with Campbell, defensive back. So who knows? Packers might not go with a receiver, but I definitely think, I mean, with Aaron Rodgers, you got as good of a quarterback as anyone right now. He's the best quarterback, I'd say, in the league last year. You got to get him a good receiver. Like he's got a couple of good. I mean, well, he's got DeVonta Adams, who's obviously insane. But I mean, other than DeVonta Adams, really they don't have much of a receiving core. I mean, they got Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's okay. I mean, Alan Lazard as well. But Marquez Stevenson, they needed another good receiver, one that would possibly have a good breakout season. And Marquez Stevenson could be exactly that out of Houston. 30 is going to be going to the Buffalo Bills. Quite a season for the Bills. They're going to go with Najee Harris. They're going to get a huge steal here. I could easily see Najee Harris going way earlier on in this draft. I wouldn't be surprised if he went in the top 20, but I got him falling to number 30 here. Alabama running back, obviously, put up 1,800 yards, 30 touchdowns last season. And for the Bills, I mean, this Bills team has got Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, great offensive line, and great offense in general. It's just, I mean, Devin Singletary is their running back right now. It was pretty crazy to me when I was watching this Bills team. I was like, yeah, Devin Singletary is the running back, and they made it to the AFC Championship game. But Najee Harris would be a huge addition here for the Bills. He would be a great addition for sure. He'd do a great job with this running back core. And really, Devin Singletary, Najee Harris, I mean, this Bills offense could easily be one of, if not the best in the league next season if they can get Najee Harris in there. Bills 2020 record, 13-3. 31 pick is going to be to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, assuming that they do lose in the Super Bowl. Joe Tryon, from Washington, defensive end, 5th one to go in this draft, 2019 stats. He did not play in 2020. Obviously, he did opt out, but he put up 41 total tackles, 13 for loss, and 8 sacks. Pretty good season out of him. And obviously for the Buccaneers here, I mean, if you look at this defensive line, they got a pretty good defensive line, but they do have a couple players who will be leaving after this 2020 season, so they will need to rebuild there. 32 pick, the last one going to the Chiefs is going to be Azeez Ojulari, Georgia linebacker, 3rd one to go in this draft. And if you look at his 2020 stats, put up 31 tackles, 12.5 for loss, 9.5 sacks. Really great season out of Ojulari. And really for this Chiefs team in general, like they just got to get a good linebacking core going. And really, I mean, if you look at this rushing core, that's definitely been the main weakness for this team. I think they've allowed 120, 130 rush yards per game this season on average. So I think Azeez Ojulari would be a huge addition for this Chiefs team. And really, I mean, this Chiefs team is going to be a dynasty, I think, for many years to come. With Patrick Mahomes and this offense and the amount of young players that this team does have, Like, yeah, Georgia's going to be quite a team moving into the future. That being said, that wraps up my first mock draft of this offseason. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this mock draft, and if you guys enjoyed this, please drop a like on it, subscribe as well, as yeah, I'd really appreciate that. But once again, appreciate you guys all watching. Once again, we will be having more than one version in the near future. I'll probably be having a second one, hopefully within maybe 2 to 3 weeks. So yeah, but that being said, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys all later.